Hi, Felicia.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, good. I'm so glad you could join me this week for this show. You're my first female CFP that's going to
Well,
be on
that's
my.
exciting. Wow,
Yeah,
I'm
I
surprised.
was telling you, I don't know very many of them. So you're one of the few that I know that I was able to
Well,
ask
we'll
to get you
we'll
on my
do
show.
better at making sure you get more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for joining. Yeah, I always like to start off every show with talking about why I picked the person to be on my show, and I do like to emphasize I pick every person to be on my show. Oh, I'm checking LinkedIn, and we are live on there.
Good,
So,
awesome.
yeah, thank you again, Felicia Wong, for joining. We met through LinkedIn, actually. So we're like virtual LinkedIn acquaintances. And then we actually met, I think, during the time when video got really popular. And we were both like wondering, well, a lot of people on LinkedIn were wondering what was going on with some videos getting promoted or not. And it's
No,
kind of
still
fun because that
wondering.
inspired us to talk. Yeah, it's so random. I still have no idea why. I've not cracked the formula.
I
Yeah.
know, I
And
get
so
that.
we actually started talking during that time and we met over video. And it was really fun to actually get to know more of you and your personality and see how fun and vivacious you are. When I actually met you
Likewise.
on video, versus just the 2D version we have of people on LinkedIn. But one thing I liked about you is you actually are pretty good at doing videos. You were actually active about being out on videos before that whole trend where everyone was trying to get on video on LinkedIn, and yours were actually like funny and educational and entertaining all at the same time. And you
I
had like
appreciate that.
tips, and
Put
you
in a
were
lot of
really
work.
putting some energy into it. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, let me start off with letting you introduce yourself to everyone here.
Sure. Hi, I'm Felicia Wong. I'm a CPA financial planner and I make content on the internet. Started doing it a little over a year ago and been sticking with it, trying to do the whole post at least 3 times a week thing to keep consistent. And I provide financial planning advice, a full financial planning. We call it like comprehensive financial planning, where it's anything from retirement planning, investments, taxes, and I prepare taxes as well as helping with that as like a main emphasis of what I do is taxes.
Oh yeah, and I almost forgot about that because that was also another thing that's very unique about you is you started off with the tax background and getting your CPA, and then you added on the financial planning, which I think makes you unique because not every single financial planner has that background. They probably learn more of the whatever estate planning or taxes after as part of the financial planning certification,
Yep.
all that. Tell us about that and how you started off in that CPA tax background.
So I started out auditing right out of college and found it wasn't quite for me after about 3.5 years auditing public companies. So I did public accounting. And then from there, I did a switch right around COVID, actually. COVID, quit auditing, like that Friday that everybody was saying, "Hey, on Monday we're going to start working from home, so why not stick around?" And I was like, "Oh, that's okay." And then later 2020, so I got my CPA. I was able to qualify to get the CPA probably in 2017, but I kept on dragging my feet actually getting it. So got the CPA 2020 and the enrolled agent when I switched over to doing taxes. And I switched over to doing taxes because I kept in touch with a professor and they were selling a part of their practice to another firm in Orange County, California, where I was living at the time, and said, "Hey, they're always looking for some help if you want to try out something different." And I said, "Sure, I'll try it out, see where it takes me." And that same professor and his daughter actually are the ones that also told me about the financial planning and the CFP. So everything kind of changed 2020, 2021, when I did that whole little career change. And the last couple of years been just adding on to it with the financial planning, staying in touch, the social media, that whole thing.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about, for people who don't know, the process to get your CPA and enrolled agent and all that?
Sure. Yeah, so the CPA is probably the most stringent. You need 150 units credits from your undergraduate or graduate studies. So I basically was maxing out all of my semesters and like some summer courses when I went to university. And then there were 4 in-person exams. So you have to go to like a prometric type place to take the test.
Traumatizing. I don't even think about
Yes.
the anymore.
I know it's been a long time now. And then you can sit, yeah, they're, gosh, I forget the timing of each of them. There's something like 4 hours each exam.
Yes.
And they break it out into different categories. So you can take financial reporting, then taxes, business concepts, and economic concepts. And then, oh gosh, I'm reading auditing, of course, what I did for a living for a little bit. And then there's one ethics test that is take home, and at least when I was doing it, it's been a while. And then for the EA is a lot simpler. It's 3 tests still that you do have to take at a site again, 100 questions, I think, each one. And they break it out into like individuals, businesses, and overall type of ethics, if I'm right on that. I should probably remember more, but it's been a few years.
Oh no. Like
And
once you get past that, you don't want to remember.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And a lot of people do question why do you have your EA if you have your CPA, but that was because I was switching over into taxes from not doing taxes before when I did get my CPA. So it could be a little bit of overkill, but because I was wanting to refresh myself with tax knowledge, I said might as well put it towards something.
Yeah, that's a lot of schooling and education. Well, I mean, while you're there, can you explain to people the difference between CPA and EA?
Yeah, the biggest difference is a CPA is more broad, I would say, in terms of the overall knowledge that they have to work on and that education part. So it is, I would say, the higher caliber of
Yeah.
the two. And it's a certification versus the EA is not a certification. The way that you're supposed to say it is you're enrolled to practice before the IRS. So, attorneys, CPAs, EAs, they can all represent their clients in front of the IRS. And it's instead of being state board certified, like the CPA you get through each of your, wherever you live in your state, and the EA is through the IRS, actually. So, it allows you a little bit more broadness in coverage for each of the states. So, you don't need to get the state specific license, which actually, because now I live in Nevada and California does require their preparers to have some sort of California tied or EA to prepare tax returns. So it actually does help for myself, I guess, too, in that respect.
Okay. Okay. And then what kind of interested you in, because you also got your CFP, which is also
Yeah.
much more education and even longer test.
Yes.
What inspired you to add that on? Do you just see it as enhancing the other things you already have?
It helped open up the door into the financial planning industry, I would say. So I was interested in helping clients that I worked with on taxes on more than just their taxes. Because when you're doing taxes, it's very reactive. You're just looking at what happened in the last year and recording it. But with financial planning, you can be a lot more proactive, help people with a lot of different areas of their life. As you know, too, with your financial coaching, right? You're helping people in different facets of their life. So I wanted something that could also help with that and add on to just and add on and move forward from just doing taxes and help people with any other parts that they might need help with.
Yeah. I like that shift in mindset where you're helping people, after the fact, but sometimes I'm sure you're thinking, "Oh, we had planned or thought about this in advance, right?"
It
And
helps a
I'm
ton. Yeah,
sure it also really helps because you do probably get asked financial questions as a tax person no matter what. But if you're not really
exactly.
a financial person, you really shouldn't be answering those. So you're all fully licensed in like everything. So you can help with whatever aspect. Yeah.
It does. I know, because I also feel like people, when they think of financial questions, I mean, the CFP is getting a lot more well known, right? But it's relatively new compared to a CPA, and so everyone knows what a CPA is. And
Yes.
they think too, when they start their search for financial advice, that maybe that's where they should start too. So it's an interesting dynamic there where because like sometimes people are still like, what is the CFP? Right? It's still
True.
like the board is doing a better job at like the education and spreading the news of it, but it's still something that I feel like people are confused as to what a financial advisor is and what they do. So I still think it's yeah, it is good. It's a good add-on.
Yeah, I could see it going very hand in hand. And I think you're right. There's some people who may not always seek out a financial person, but people are always concerned about taxes. And they do want to go to their tax person even when it's financial things. So, what type
Yeah,
of
because of the
situations
taxes.
do you think where it goes really hand in hand? And do you see people reaching out for or interested in?
Where do I see, sorry, I missed kind of like the
Like,
first
just
part.
kind of
Where do I
like, where do
see?
you think it really goes hand in hand where people want the tax expertise and the financial planning expertise together?
Yeah, I would say a lot of different scenarios. A lot of times when people are making investment decisions, especially or business decisions, there's a lot of times that people are thinking of taxes like if you're trying to sell your business, that's a big one because if you sell a business, you're probably looking at getting a big chunk of money from that. And you're trying to figure out what the best tax strategies are with that. That's lately what I've been seeing with a couple different clients is acquisitions, mergers, those types of things. And there's of course going to be a big tax consequence because you're looking at a big sum of money depending on what the transaction is. And then from there, you're thinking, well, what, after I do pay my taxes, what do I do with that money? So that's been a big part that I've seen in terms of a overlap, of course. And then, I mean, it's almost like every facet because if you're thinking like, oh, I'm making money, you're thinking, oh, I'm paying taxes. And then you're thinking,
Yeah.
what do I do with the leftover money? So I would say it is like a pretty overlapping portion, but especially in terms of business owners,
Yes, because they get
because
way
it's more
more
convoluted.
deductions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they get to deduct so much more out than just maybe a W-2 employee. But I'm sure you sometimes get some of those that they really want more of the tax optimization, but maybe can't always, or you're like, oh, you are in a super low tax bracket.
Right. Yes. So a lot like the way that I've tried to also pose my tax work with people is to make it a lot less transactional, a lot more like hands-on, making sure people know like and understand what their taxes mean, if there are any open pieces that they could be thinking of moving forward that they aren't taking advantage of, or just giving them the peace of mind that they are doing everything that they could be doing based on their tax situation. Like you said, if you're just a W 2 employee and you're trying to chug along and do everything you need to do. It's like, okay, 401k contributions, maybe your HSA, maybe you're
Yeah,
doing an
small
FSA, whichever
things.
one works for you. And then you're just trying to optimize your investments for the long term. It's a lot of the times too reminding people, okay, you have a savings account, it's at Bank of America, maybe we should switch it to like a high yield savings account, right? It's like those tiny little things too that I can review when doing people's taxes where it's like, oh, you don't have any taxable interest this year, right? Like, what are you doing with your savings? So it's like being, reading a tax return and looking at that too, it's in terms of like the proactive piece and knowing with like my financial planning background and bringing it like over to the taxes, it's like, what can I look at on this tax return that might help somebody think about their future a little bit?
Oh, that's true. Because even like the difference between traditional and Roth, right? A lot of people like
Yeah,
to,
yeah, yeah.
they're always thinking of the tax break up front, but
Which
later
is
on,
fine.
sucks.
Yeah, exactly. And it is like a lot of that conversation too, right? It's like, should I do Roth or traditional? And just explaining to people their options when it comes to that because it traditional does make a lot more sense if you are a higher earner. Maybe some people that are higher earners want to take a little break and you can think of ways to then like convert during those like lower income years. Yeah, there's a lot of different things, but it's hard to like, if you're doing everything on your own, it's hard to understand what would be the best thing to do,
It
which is why
is.
like
You can't predict the future, right? And
no
sometimes
one can
people
predict the
don't realize
future.
how much that money is going to grow to, or like you're talking about, you might think you have some lower income years, and maybe you get married and then now your income doubles, and like just unpredictable things. You don't know. You can say you're gonna have these lower income years, but maybe your income just keeps growing and growing, right? you know
Mhm.
so that's part of life and all that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what type of people do you like to serve the most?
I would say, so it's funny because I have been working on this a little bit more and going back to it, but there have been two that I've been focusing on. And one is actually like newer business owners, like, or wanting to start, say, like, let's say between like 1 and 3 to 5 years of starting a business, because I like to help people with making sure that everything is set up correctly so that when it is a few years down the road, you're not coming back and saying, oh, I could have done this better,
Yeah.
or there's something that I forgot. So I do really like helping people get their businesses set up. That's been something I've had a lot of fun with, and especially other women business owners. So I would say it is kind of like that, like myself, right? It's like we try to find people to help that we can like relate to and
Yeah.
give a little bit of more like whoever we can help the most. And then the other part that I have been working with people on too is if like other women with equity compensation, which is like stock comp through your employer. So those are kind of the two niches I work with or like to work with, but I do have quite a broad range of clients that I'm helping at this time.
Awesome. Yeah, I went to a business expo not that long ago, and the keynote speaker, he was a small business owner, obviously, because everyone was. But he mentioned how he got audited in his early years of being a business owner, and he was saying one of his main tips was get some tax help for your small business as soon as you possibly can. He says everyone, because I'm sure you hear this from a lot of people. They're like, well, I'm just going to spend all this money because I want to have a loss on my business every year. And he's actually saying, like, no, the IRS, everybody, they want you to actually earn money as a business. They don't want you to take a
Yeah.
loss every year. This is not just a pass through or just tax deductions, but you need to do it legally, and you need to, like, get it in order while it's small and you're figuring it out. Cause yeah, he said he went through a tax audit. It was pretty devastating. I mean, he got through it, but he was saying, as a small business owner, and he still had a W-2 job too when this was all happening. He had actually get crazy.
Yeah.
He was on Shark Tank. He had this like beer
Oh, that's
opener
crazy.
thing. It was kind of cool.
Funny.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, he was talking about yeah, he got audited by the IRS, and he realized like they're not out to get small business owners, and they don't want people just running businesses at losses for years and years. Like they actually want people to make money.
Yeah, because they do look at that as the hobby loss rules. So if you have a loss in the last 3 out of the 5 years, they could basically look at your tax return and say, this isn't a for-profit business. You're just writing things off for a potential hobby, sometimes is what they look at it as.
Well, I didn't
So it's
know they had a name for it.
it's interesting. Yes. Yeah, it is very important for people when they are thinking about launching a business to have accurate records just in case, right? I mean, always you should, but also for the IRS, they're always, they're just looking for good documentation. And the interesting part about audits nowadays too is a lot of them are remote. You'll just be working with the IRS person if it's just a small thing over the phone or over the mail. So it's a little less daunting, but I know how it feels anytime you get any sort of letter from the state or the
I
IRS
know.
because, yeah, we were just talking about that.
I have experiences. I'll tell you about it after. Go ahead.
Because it's still when they send these letters, they're like from some old center that is still using some outdated typewriter, it seems,
You have
right?
no
You
idea
look
what
at
it is till you actually get it. And if you have that like
yeah,
mail preview thing, you get that email, you see something's coming from the IRS. So I actually had identity theft one year. It was crazy.
shoot.
And I actually had a CPA that year, and I went to go file my taxes. I actually owed a lot of money that year. So it was crazy that somebody filed a return in my name, and they used like my social, they had my address. It was really scary, but they
Yeah,
were trying to get a big refund. And the other thing that triggered the IRS was they were filing as married, and I wasn't married. And
whole
when I went
thing.
to go file my IRS taxes, and like I said, I was doing it closer to the deadline because I owed quite a bit that year. So I'm waiting so closer to like April 15th. And then my CPA told me that it's that they already had a return filed for me. So that was really useful and nice to have someone to help me unravel all that, because we had to write them a
Yes.
letter. And I've also had another experience where it was funny. This is another year I had a CPA, a different CPA, and she inverted a couple of numbers on one
Hmm.
of the, I think, daycare expenses I was trying to deduct. It was on my state taxes. I actually used to live in California also, and you could deduct them. And that triggered like a whole audit. And you know what? I'll still remember to this day. I'm not upset that she made a very honest mistake. It was the fact that she never apologized. She never
Ooh,
apologized. She just like
ooh,
refiled it, and some of it I just couldn't track down certain daycare providers, so I just ended up owing a bit because they wanted to like audit every single daycare expense, like, and it was honestly, it was a time where, I was kind of going through a lot of daycare providers, and I couldn't track down every single one years later. But yeah,
yeah.
that was one that, so
Oh,
yeah, kind of not so great experience. She didn't really apologize. She did kind of fix it. And then the other one where, yeah, and still to this day, every single year I get a letter from the IRS with a different PIN because I had the
yes.
identity theft issue. Yeah, it was a serious thing. I had to file a police report. Yeah, because it's just weird. They had all my information. I mean, it
Yeah.
was it,
That's
it was
such a mess.
wrong, but they were trying to file under my name.
Good to take those things to put in place some
Yeah. Yeah,
protections.
but
I
those
know.
are times when it's nice to have a CPA because they do help you out with all that stuff when it's really
Yes.
stressful and you're getting the letters and you need to respond back. And I think there was another year I had an IRS issue and they sent a letter. But you're right. I mean, you just have to deal with it. You can't ignore the letters. You have to talk with them. And sometimes they make mistakes too, but you have to back it up with evidence. Because I think there was another time they questioned my filing status, and I sent in the proof, and they were fine with it. But you just can't let these things go.
You can't. I know. Exactly. It's such a headache. It's such an extra thing to be dealing with. And if you have trouble with your CPA, you always got to just try to find another one. There's plenty of them out there. There's
Well,
plenty of
there
CPAs
are,
to
there
be.
are, and that's what I tell people. It's like, yeah, I have a bad experience with one. You just got to find and maybe vet another one out. But they are worth their money, especially when, like I said, any of these times when you get questioned or there's an audit. That's when they really come in handy beyond just the tax filing and helping you with deductions. Of just like we're talking about, it's just so stressful dealing with the IRS. Normal
Yeah.
people don't want to deal with it.
It doesn't even matter if it's like a tiny little thing. It still causes a lot of stress because deep down everybody's very afraid of the IRS, and I get it. It makes sense, but like you said, it's not like they're out to get everybody. They just are doing their job.
Yeah, but I love that passion for wanting to help newer business owners because that can feel very daunting. Like we're talking about, I sometimes feel like there are people that um, they just want to spend a whole lot. They think, oh, I'm just, getting this big tax deduction, but it's like, no, a percentage is getting deducted out. And if it's true, business expenses, right? And things that you really do want to buy for your business, but to not just be filing that you have this LLC or this business every year and it's taking a loss.
Hmm. I know. I feel like LLCs have gotten an interesting rep in terms of, oh, just open an LLC and write everything off.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's, do you think it's sometimes the rise of all this stuff on social media about real estate and passive income and all that? Everyone's like, I'm going to create an LLC and I don't have to pay
I
taxes.
think I think there has been some misinformation, but I also feel like it's also just people spreading it. It's like when I work with clients who have heard about this, it's also from their friends or neighbors or something like that, where they just hear about them being able to write everything off and they got a refund this year from blah blah blah. And so I think it's definitely social media is adding to it, but I still think people are chit-chatting amongst themselves and spreading it too.
Oh, that is a good video idea for you. You could be dispelling myths.
Dispelling the LLC myths. I know. I feel like I've seen that a lot, but maybe not enough people have seen it, so I can keep going.
Yeah, yeah. Well, do you have any, would you like to tell us about a client story or testimonial, just someone that really inspired you, that you're really proud of helping?
Sure, sure. I would say a recent story, actually, and it was for I do hourly financial planning as well.
Right.
So if someone just has like quick questions or needs help with something, I do hourly planning. And recently I was helping a younger girl, and she just the last thing she wanted to do was spend time on her investments. She knew she had to get her money invested, but just didn't want to look at it, didn't want to do it. And we were actually able to set up, she didn't know that you could do automatic investing with Fidelity. I don't know, I'm sure all the other brokers do it as well, like Charles Schwab, Vanguard, all that stuff. So I kind of just helped her with holding her hand and making sure that she got those automatic investments set up for every 2 weeks, every month too, because she was still contributing money to this brokerage account, but had a huge chunk of money that she wanted to get invested, and it was just sitting there. And a lot of times, if we're, and it was crazy too, because she has a lot of knowledge about the investment market. She's like, I know I need to put it in. I know I need to do something. I just can't get myself to do it. I'm like, well, you know what you're going to do? It doesn't matter. Every Wednesday, every other Wednesday, every like Wednesday of the month, we're just going to set aside this X amount of dollars and get it set up. And it really was just kind of like an accountability partner, right? Because sometimes too,
Yeah.
it's hard for us to do something, and it's sometimes just nice for someone to be there to help us. So that was good, because I think a lot of the times we all have that problem where it's like, I don't even want to look at this. I can't even think about doing it. But knowing that there's the automatic portion of it, it's almost like you can take, some people don't know too, like, right, you can take part of your pay stub and have it deposited to different accounts. So that helps with also the not having to do things, right? Because you can automatically put some into savings if that's like your goal to increase your savings, or automatically deposit into your brokerage account if that's your goal to like put that up higher in your 401k, those kind of things. Yeah, that was just a recent
That's
one.
really cool. I like that. And you know what? And a lot of people don't realize that when you tell people, the Roth IRA limit is $7,000 a year, that's what's daunting to people. But then when you tell people, oh, it's really like, you can do $300 a month or $500,
Yeah,
that's much more manageable to start out, right? And then they probably realize my life is not that much different with that money coming out, right? And now they're dollar cost averaging and it's like set up automatically. So I really
yeah,
like that because yeah, I don't think everyone realizes that. People are used to always stating things in the yearly limits and the maximums.
right.
And then people are like, well, I don't have $7,000. I'm not going to invest in a Roth IRA.
And then you just never return back to it because you see that big chunk of money and you think, I can't do that. And then you never come back to it. And it's been years and years.
Yeah.
And exactly, if you could just break it out by maybe every paycheck, right? So if you get paid twice a month, or maybe you want to do it every other paycheck to make it a little bit easier. But yeah, cash flow is so important, our monthly cash flow, so that we know how to plan for things and budget for
Yeah.
things.
It's the
So I get that too.
consistency in the habit. No, but you're really good for doing that because even I was doing that with my son and same thing. I was just telling him like do the $100 automatic thing but it's daunting and he's young, right? He's also 18. So I had to really walk
Mhm.
him through it step by step by step, right? And that's easier than telling him, let's do whatever $3,000 in a Roth IRA. He's just doing $100 a month, but yeah, he's not that
Yeah.
interested either. So it is like pulling teeth. I had to get him to open up the account. I had to show him, and then I had to be like, "Hey, we have to
Yeah.
make sure it's actually getting invested in something every single time it
That
visits a
too, right?
brokerage."
The investing part. And one thing I
Yes.
will say too about that is, I was talking to somebody who, she's young and she's really good at maxing out her 401k already and also saving. And I was like, what is getting you to do this at such a young age? Because a lot of people in their 20s just won't want to do it,
Yeah.
thinking that they need their dollars to live and all this stuff. And she's like, because it just makes sense. If I can max out in my 20s, my 401k, it'll spend all this time growing and I won't have to save as much when I'm older, and maybe I'll be able to retire early. And I'm like, maybe you're just like one of the outliers, because even if you tell
Yeah,
people
she's a
that,
mutant. She gets it, but that's not most. I mean, I wasn't like that in my 20s either.
I know I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But that's awesome. That's a huge win. And like we were talking about, you think it's simple and everyone knows that, but a lot of people don't realize it's kind of like something you can fit into your monthly budget and automatically do it. And that's why I always encourage people. It's like do what you can, and then every year you kind of revisit, and you can maybe do some more. But it's not about you have to put in $7,000 at the beginning of the year because a lot of people don't have that,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
you can do it, spread it out throughout the entire year. I love that. That is a big win for both her and you.
It's good to just have those little reminders too that you can automate things if you don't want to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've automated the heck out of my finances. And I think in the beginning, when people are like, we're talking about cash flow and budgeting, what I realize is daunting to some people because because I'm like, well, why don't you just automate paying your bills? They're so scared they won't have enough money. So they kind of need that confidence where they're more comfortable with, what they're spending, what they're actually budgeting, and, their income coming in before, you can't tell them, let's do this $1,000 deposit to your Roth IRA. That's like very daunting to someone younger, right? They're scared that they're not going to have any. They can do it maybe later, right? They can build up to that, but to get to where they can invest $1,000 a month, they have to start from like whatever $100 one day or
Yeah,
200.
you got to make it like little bite-sized pieces that aren't too scary.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. Yeah. So as we're kind of wrapping up a little bit, I had to kind of go over because you have so many different things that you offer, all the different things that you can do and offer, just so you can kind of sum it up. Because I know it might feel, complicated for people to understand.
No, I know. I think that's the hardest part that I've had to with everything. It's like, so what do you do? Like, well, so gotta concise it. Tax preparation, tax planning, and financial planning. So financial planning is that whole holistic sort of things where you're looking at
That like
insurance.
investing and the planning, both, right? You do both.
Yes, I do help people with managing their investments for them so that it's not something that they have to really ever worry about as long as we can get a plan in place, right? So think about your goals and work backwards from what you want to accomplish and see what is feasible.
Yeah, see, that's awesome because I feel like now the big trend for everyone is they want to do the flat fee financial planning, right? Some people don't want their, investments and assets managed, but then some people do because they don't want to worry about any of that stuff. They would rather have someone
Yeah,
else.
yeah. And that's fine as long as you're still doing your due diligence and making sure that who you're giving your money to is doing what's best for you. So I know,
That's Yeah,
yeah, because I
let's talk
know
about that real quick because I always have these discussions with people, and I want to get your take on it. Like when people are like, "Oh, well, there's all these scummy people, and they want like a percentage, and like, how dare they?" And like, what is your kind of answer or counter argument?
everything.
I have my
So
own, but I'll let you say. Well, what do you say to that?
I still like, I think that there's something for everybody, right? And so I like that there's a difference in what financial advisors and investment managers can provide, right? So some people will just take people's money and run with it, and some people will take someone's money and do a full financial plan with it to make sure that their money is in line with what they actually want to accomplish. And then there's people who just provide advice, which is good because sometimes people don't want to hand their money off to somebody. So I think there's something good for everybody. But in terms of wanting to find someone who has your best interest, you can always understand, like, okay, how are you getting paid? Right. And if it is like from
Yeah,
just a percentage of my assets, how do I know that you're doing like what's best for me? Right. And you have to understand too, um, they're probably doing what's best for you if they're not taking your money right away. There's like a big difference between people who are like, just give me your money, I'll start investing it. And let's go through what you want to accomplish, what your life goals are. And then you can give me your money so I can make sure that it's in line with what you want. So it's just also taking into consideration like that timeline of working with the advisor, because a good advisor will definitely take into consideration what you need, your risk tolerance, all of that jazz before asking you to send all your money over.
I like that. I never thought of that, but recently someone told me that they contacted a financial advisor, and then the first conversation they're like, "Let's get the paperwork and let's open up the." They didn't.
To
This person
transfer
did
the
not spend
money.
time getting to know this person, and
Yeah,
I do think that's one of the great things about being on LinkedIn and social media. People kind of get to know you a little bit, right, over time. They don't know
what they
everything
do.
about you. Like they're
Yes.
getting to know you a little bit through your content and what you're all about, and your philosophy and style. And it's just funny because I hear that argument, and I always say to people, I don't think you can get scammed unless you totally hand over all control of your money and decision making to someone else. As long as you're still like, if you treat it more like you're in partnership with this person, and you're like, "Oh, hey, Felicia, what's going on? And I have questions about this. And can you send me the prospectus? Or let's talk about this versus that." You know what I'm saying? Where it's like they're active participant in it. I say it's the same like in a relationship with a doctor or a surgeon or like your own healthcare. You don't just hand off your entire health and everything to doctor or the medical industry. You're still asking these questions. You're not becoming a doctor. You're not going to medical school yourself. You're just like, you're just learning a little bit. So like, or you're like, oh, is there something else where is a shorter recovery time, or
You're
maybe
staying
something like these
involved. Yep.
symptoms, or I don't want to, have to be in the hospital that long. Is there something, you know what I'm saying? Just being very inquisitive and
Always.
just, and, and it's kind of like you treat yourself like we're in partnership together with this money thing. And of course, I want some guidance and instruction. And yeah, that's how I see it. So I'm not saying nobody scams anybody, but I'm saying I also think the person who gets scammed is the one that it's almost like they have that victim story. They've let go of all control. They're the person probably never checking their accounts. They were never prompting their financial advisor, financial planner for appointments, checkups. Like, hey, could I get how's it doing for the quarter? Or let's do a check-in for the year. Or let's
Yeah.
talk about how goals have changed. I admit,
Yeah.
even when I had a financial advisor, I was very proactive about those meetings and wanting to
Mm,
talk to mine and emailing back and forth and all that. So
it's
yeah,
important. I think so. I think it's important to still exactly like have your foot in the door with similar with your health. Your health is your health. Your money is your money. You want to make sure that it's everything is in line with what you want it to be doing.
yeah,
I
yeah,
would
and I think you're right. There's
I
different
wouldn't
levels people want. Yeah, so if people
yeah,
want the
exactly.
assets managed, or probably someone more like me, I would just want the planning. Like I'd probably move, but there are some people they won't do all the other things. They would rather have it all taken care of by someone else. Creating that relationship with that person, I think is so important. And yeah, like I said, and also as we were talking about earlier, there's a bazillion ways you're regulated. There's a lot of
Yeah.
certifications in licensing, and I'm not saying no one can
Yeah.
steal anyone's money. I think it's very hard now.
It's definitely harder, but I mean, the biggest thing that comes to mind right now is all these like cryptocurrency scams, and like people still do need to have their skepticism in their pockets because there's so much stuff still being thrown at people out on the internet that
Yes.
they're just going with because an influencer or somebody has like recommended it. We need to stop trusting these influencers so much.
Well, that's true. And I was talking with someone about this, I think just today. And it's when people are chasing those really high returns that there's usually some other thing going on, right? It's like, why do you
Hmm.
want like 25% returns? Like, what is really behind this? And it's just interesting because when they're just chasing returns, usually like maybe they feel like they've missed out, right? Or they saw something in the news, or I'm late to
Yeah,
this investing game. So how am I going to make up for my lack
yeah,
of, not investing for all these years?
that's true.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting because I see that, especially like the resurgence of the crypto and all that right now. It's becoming popular, but it's almost like when you hear about it in the news, that's why I tell people also, you're finding out about it way after, right? By the time it hit like Yahoo News or something, or it's all over YouTube, you're getting in on it way after. So
Yeah,
you can, but I mean, it's just, yeah, it's interesting, like people's investing mindset sometimes. Oh, we could have a whole nother discussion about that.
another we could talk about that forever.
Yeah, so people. But thank you so much for being on my
Thank
show.
you.
I also want to give you an opportunity to let people know where you're at. I know you're on LinkedIn, but I think you're on some other places also.
I'm on Instagram, Felicia CPA, but it's almost the same stuff that you'll find on LinkedIn. But if you prefer Instagram, I'm there as well. I'm also on YouTube posting, cross posting. And I think that's kind of it. I'm not too involved in anything else in terms. I look at other social medias, but I don't post too much on them.
Okay. Okay, so you're on all three of them,
LinkedIn.
the big ones. Yeah. But LinkedIn mostly. Okay. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time and for being on my
Thank
show.
you.
And
Great,
yeah,
great
thanks so
to be
much.
here.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
bye.